Hello and welcome to the old Fliers. The first significant naval battle decided by air power is considered to be the Battle of Taranto. This took place in World War II on November 11-12, 1940. The Battle of Taranto marked a significant shift in naval warfare tactics. It demonstrated the effectiveness of carrier-based air power in naval battles. The British Royal Navy's attack on the Italian fleet at Taranto showcased the potential of aircraft carriers as powerful naval weapons capable of striking enemy fleets from a distance. The Italian fleet posed a threat to the British supplies into Malta, North Africa and the Middle East. Admiral Andrew Cunningham launched Fairey Swordfish torpedo bombers from the aircraft carrier Illustrious. The British attack severely damaged the Italian fleet anchored at Taranto by launching a surprise nighttime carrier-based air raid. 3 Italian battleships and 1 heavy cruiser were disabled, effectively crippling half of Italy's capital ship strength in the Mediterranean. This damage significantly weakened the Italian Navy's ability to challenge British naval dominance in the Mediterranean Sea. This was a huge boost to Allied morale at a time when Axis forces were advancing in various theatres of war. The victory at Taranto demonstrated that the British Navy could still deliver significant blows to the enemy and was capable of innovation and adaptation in the face of new challenges. The Battle of Taranto forced the Axis powers, particularly Germany, to reconsider their naval strategies. It highlighted the vulnerability of surface fleets to carrier-based air attacks and prompted them to rethink their naval doctrines and investments in naval aviation. The Battle of Taranto influenced subsequent naval operations in the Mediterranean and beyond. It served as a blueprint for future carrier-based operations during World War II, including the pivotal Battle of Midway in the Pacific Theatre. The Japanese surprise attack on the American fleet anchored at Pearl Harbour a year later was modelled on Taranto. Overall, the Battle of Taranto was important because it demonstrated the potency of carrier-based air power, inflicting significant damage on the Italian fleet, boosting British morale and influencing naval strategies and operations throughout World War II and beyond.
The British attack took the Regia Marina anchored at the Taranto harbour by surprise and decisively proved the ascendancy of naval aviation over the weaponry employed by battleships. It was vital for Britain to dominate the oceans and guard the main routes employed by its trade ships that serviced the empire across all continents. When World War II broke out after Britain and France declared war on Hitler and the Third Reich, the tide quickly changed in Germany's favour. Then, after France surrendered to the restless Blitzkrieg forces in 1940, the United Kingdom suddenly found itself fighting independently. Mussolini and Italy declared war on the British on June 10, 1940. Although Italy's Regia Marina was not as powerful as it once was a few decades earlier, it was still a formidable force. The fleet had several strategic harbours at its disposal, from which the Axis could launch attacks on Malta and dominate the Mediterranean Sea. The Royal Navy turned to Italy to eliminate its fleet and recover its supremacy in the Mediterranean. However, this required meticulous planning, and Operation MB-8 was thus launched. The Royal Navy planned to counter the Regia Marina that dated to before World War II. Opposing the naval power of other nations was part of British tradition, and the Royal Navy had been planning to take action against the port of Taranto as far back as the aftermath of the Italian invasion of Abyssinia in 1935. The Regia Marina fleet had been stationed there since the early 1930s. When Mussolini decided to launch military operations in Libya to satisfy his territorial thirst and stop the British supply line in Egypt, the Royal Navy created Operation Judgment, which finally called for the destruction of the Italian fleet at Taranto. The war in North Africa soon intensified between the Italians, the French, and the British forces. As long as the Regia Marina remained in Taranto, English supply convoys had to cross the Mediterranean through Gibraltar and Malta and be prey to Italian fire. Because of this, they now needed to steam around the Cape of Good Hope and make their way to the top of Africa through the Suez Canal. Following this safer route was slow and took much longer, but it was only a matter of time before the British ground units began struggling for supplies. The British couldn't lure out the Italian Navy to destroy it, as Admiral Inigo Campioni knew too well that his forces could not be easily replaced. Instead, the Royal Navy would take the fight to Taranto, following a plan suggested by Lumley Leicester, the captain of the aircraft carrier HMS Glorious. Leicester's strategy was centered around the old but reliable Fairey Swordfish biplane torpedo bombers, capable of conducting a night attack on Taranto when the Italians least expected it. Upon approval from Admiral Andrew Cunningham, the Royal Navy then began training its men for the secret endeavour. The British task force, led by now Admiral Leicester, consisted of light cruisers Berwick, York, Glasgow, and Gloucester, destroyers Hyperion, Ilex, Hasty, and the aircraft carrier HMS Illustrious. The 24 Swordfish bombers aboard Illustrious came from various naval air squadrons from the Fleet Air Arm, and although these warplanes comprised the main British aerial force, several Fairey Fulmer fighters were also recruited to provide air cover. Several reconnaissance flights by Martin Marylands took pictures of the Italian fleet at Taranto during the first week of November 1940. The Italians did not suspect that an attack was coming their way, and the obtained intelligence indicated that the Italian fleet at Taranto consisted of 6 battleships, 7 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 8 destroyers. All the ships were defended by 100 anti-aircraft guns and more than 180 machine guns located in the port. Barrage balloons also protected the entrance in case of an attack by low-fighting aircraft like the Swordfish, and anti-torpedo nets protected 1/3 of the fleet. The British task force made the necessary modifications to their plan and scheduled the attack for November 11th. The first wave of 12 Swordfish, under the command of Lieutenant Commander Kenneth Williamson, took to the skies at around 9 p.m., while the second wave left Illustrious almost 2 hours later, under cover of night. Williamson's wave consisted of 6 Swordfish with torpedoes, 4 with 110-kilogram conventional bombs, and 2 with flares. This air force approached the harbor at around 11 p.m., when a Swordfish with flares left formation and dropped 16 flares to light up the port. The Italian watch officers were caught entirely off guard, and they were suddenly under attack. The loud alarm woke up the Italian sailors sleeping in their ships, but it was too late. 2 Swordfish came down from the sky and made a dive-bombing attack, setting fire to oil tanks. Williamson and the rest of the aircraft then began to pick off the capital ships, but as the commander approached the battleship Conte di Cavour, his Swordfish was shot down by anti-aircraft gunfire. Still, Williamson managed to drop a torpedo that blasted an 8-meter hole in Conte's side, while the rest of the Swordfishes dodged the barrage balloons and continued dropping torpedoes. Battleship Vittoria was then hit by 2 torpedoes, and the rest missed a strike on the Andrea Doria. Captain O. Patch's unit suddenly attacked with everything they had, and 2 cruisers were put out of commission with a single torpedo, while 4 destroyers were damaged in the following minutes. The second wave appeared next, and launched more flares to identify its targets, hitting Littorio with another torpedo. Lieutenant Commander J.W. Hale then approached and hit battleship Duilio, blowing part of its hull. Several other ships were hit, and the entire force then retreated and got back to the aircraft carrier by 2 a.m. Only 2 men and 2 aircraft were lost on the British side, which was quite an accomplishment when compared to the losses suffered by the Italians. Half of the Italian force was put out of commission in just one night. The Italians would retaliate a year later when a group of frogmen carried out a raid on Alexandria to destroy Valiant and Queen Elizabeth. Admiral Cunningham would later say that, quote, "Taranto and the night of November 11th, 1940, should be remembered forever as having shown once and for all that in the Fleet Air Arm, the Navy has its most devastating weapon."
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to promote our channel.